Let's start our evening, everyone, with a quote. Life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the moments that take our breath away. That was by Maya Angelou. And to everyone I haven't already spoken to, how are you? I hope you're having a great evening. Welcome to Above the Noise Talk Show, where our attitudes and perspectives shape our reality. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ms. Angie. I'm your co-host, your moderator, along with my partner in crime, Rawle. I am. How are you doing, Rawle?
I am wonderful. I'm above ground, so I'm good. And
So has fall hit your area in Toronto yet?
well, it did, and then today almost felt like a late summer day. It was a little warmer, but yeah, definitely fall is here. Where I live here in Canada, in Ontario, we get the full fall colors. So you got the ambers and the oranges and the yellows, and um, I'm sure there are busloads of Japanese tourists that every year plan a trip to Toronto and Ontario to come and see the fall colors. So, and I'm sure it's the same in a lot of the northeastern part of the United States, because I remember fall is my favorite time of year.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up in New York and Brooklyn, I loved the fall and dumping into big piles of leaves and playing football outside. That's why American Thanksgiving is still a very special holiday for me because of that. So, but yeah, fall is here. My favorite time of the year.
Well, the trees are showcasing that beautiful rays of color here in Clarksburg because, I'm all the way up almost in Kentucky.
Mm. Yeah, I would imagine the colors there must be just vibrant as well. So, but yeah, thanks for asking.
Sure.
Um,
Can you give me the rules of engagement,
I
please?
guess I can. I was waiting for you to set me up. Put up, no, guess not. Is this thing on? Are you guys alive? No, no. I'm just gonna have fun with this, whether you guys jump in the pool with me or not. I don't care. The water is warm. I invite you in. So, but to Miss Angie's point, thank you for joining us here above the noise. This is still a relatively new venture where Miss Angie and I are looking to engage our poet friends and our friends in general, people in general, in conversations that we believe matter. So before we dive into this series and the show today, I just want to give you some rules of engagement. Going back to my corporate days, before any meeting, would always set up what are the rules of engagement for participating. So, first of all, I'll ask you to please respect each other's viewpoints. There are times when people will say things that we agree with or we don't agree with, but either way, it is their viewpoint, and the only way to really understand it is to fully listen to it and engage in it. Engage in the sense of listening to see what you really agree with and disagree with. And if you disagree with it all, that's okay as well, but still be respectful. Respect the time allotted. Each panelist will have an opportunity to answer questions, and that time period will be anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. So just respect the time. Miss Angie will remind you of those things as well. No over talking or continuous talking. So if a question is asked, no over talking. If you are hearing what someone is saying and you want to interject, as we tend to do in free flowing conversations, because it's technology we're using, I will invite you to find raise your hand icon and use that, right? If you have something that you want to interject in the moment, raise your hand. Now, the reason why you're raising the hand is so that we as moderators and hosts see it, but also the person that is speaking sees it, and they have a choice. They can accept your interjection or they can say, not right now, and be good with that, right? If you've ever seen any kind of debating, particularly debates out of Oxford, they do that a lot. And the speaker has the opportunity to say, I accept your interjection, or they do not. So we're going to practice the same thing here. Like I said, each panelist will provide an answer to the questions and insight. And then two, there'll be questions from the audience or even from Miss Angie. You may not all be required to answer. She'll definitely direct that process. Um, so, like I said, a panelist who wants to push back on a point, raise your Zoom hand. To interject during someone's time, raise your Zoom hand, and it will either be accepted or declined. Other than that, it's a very simple process um, that Miss Angie will. Yes, Cheryl, were you going to ask something?
Yes, Rawle, where is the raised hand icon? Where do you find that?
If you on your very bottom of your Zoom window, if you hit the three line, the more button, I think it's the one, two, three, four. It's the fifth icon down says raise hand. Do you see what I mean?
Well, I see the button, but I don't have that option. It's just view profile chat, and then that's it.
You have one that says react.
Yes, I do.
Look on it, react, and see if that works.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, it's under
Thank
react.
you.
Okay, because I just have a raised hand, so might be different. That's good. See, good to know, Angie. So it's a
And
different.
you had a different version, that's why.
Yeah, I guess so. So yeah, so that those are the rules of engagement. If you have any, does anyone have any questions or concerns or comments? No. All right. I'll turn the mic back over to Miss Angie.
Yes, thank you, Rob. For my guests, I would like for you to feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat, and I will present them to the panel. Now, I would love to introduce our outstanding panel. First, we have Miss Chyrel J. Jackson. She's a #1 ranked best-selling Amazon author and literary supernova. She was reared and raised in the south suburbs outside of Chicago. African American literature influenced her writing and is one of her favorite genres. Chyrel writes in the spirit of her past literary ancestors. Next, we have Mr. Eddy Foreman, aka Ed Potastic, has been writing poetry for 8 years in a Washington, D.C. and is a Washington, D.C. native. He's a regular in several open mic events. His motto is, I write and speak poetry through and through to inspire people like you. While you have the mic.
Well, excuse me. Thank you, Mrs. Angie. So before we dive into the thesis question of this first show, I thought it was important to kind of talk about the series itself, and then I'll ask the panelists to give their insight. And for those that will be viewing this and listening later, there's a third panelist that's unable to make it tonight because of a family situation. So we'll introduce Brian next month when he's back with us. So, what is? Excuse me. I got a bit of a frog in my throat. But what is this series that I crafted called Black Like Me, Life in the Dysphoria? Before we get into that, I think maybe let's break that down a bit, because first of all, when I say Black, I don't mean race, because I do not believe there are different races on this planet. So when I say Black, I'm talking about the shading, the pigmentation that we identify as an ethnicity, as a group, right? So that's when I say Black, that's what that means for me. When we talk about Black, Black like me, I am Black, and I say proudly, I am human, but I'm also very proud to be Black. I have no shame in my pigmentation whatsoever. I accept the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful of those that look like me, that came before me, right? So I hold no shame when we think of Black, because Black is beautiful, but then again, so are all the other pigmentations. So just so you understand that. And then the Black lives, that's obviously, for me, life is important. It's not so much about Black lives. Does life matter? Life, not just human life, all life. And when you look at the other part of it, life in the diaspora, I think I mispronounced that the first time. And that simply means any group of people that has been dispersed outside of their mainland. So in this case, when we're talking about Africans that has been dispersed throughout the world, the Jews are another example. There are many people that have been displaced from their traditional or original lands into other lands. So that's what that means. So we as Black people have been in what we now call North America for well over 600 years, 700 years. From majority of us from the majority of us from the continent of what we call Africa today. Because when we were there, it wasn't a continent. Africa was not a country, it's not a continent, it's just a land that housed many different tribes, just like North America did with the indigenous tribe. We are just indigenous to Africa. It's the same thing. Maybe we'll do another show one day about indigenous, because I find that to be a very interesting term when we're all indigenous to something. But so the Blacks that are living here, their ancestry, majority of them can be traced back to Africa. Some of us made a detour from Africa and went to South America, most likely Brazil, because Brazil had a very strong slave population as well. Many went to the Caribbean, like my ancestors, whether it be Jamaica, Grenada, Barbados. In my case, a lot of my people, I stem from Trinidad and Tobago, is where I was born. And then you have those that came to North America, and then you have those that spent time in South America and the Caribbean and made it to the United States. Very few went the other way. It seems like even back in slavery day, America was the destination. So that's where, when we talk about this, the displacement of people, that's kind of where we were. Now, having said that, even 600-700 years ago, when the Atlantic slave trade started, not every Black person on the planet was enslaved. And that was not the only slave trade that was going on at that time as well. Because when the Atlantic slave trade started, the Arabic slave trade was going on for centuries before that. It's probably the oldest slave trade market that we know of that is actually still going on to this day. Right? So that's just to give you a little understanding of how this series was crafted. And then as I was thinking about it and then talking with Mrs. Anjie, I decided from the last show that we did when we had another poet on, it prompted that to me in my head that people want to talk about these things. That was one of the big things that came about. I know it got a little disjointed with our guests because of, again, the over talking and so forth. But there was a lot of positive that came out of that show. And this was one of them, realizing that people wanted to talk. And then when I say talk, they want to share their experiences, but I think as well, they want to hear more truth about who we are and the things that we as a people have experienced, that many are finding a disconnect with today. Because for me today, when I look at Black people today, to steal a line from a minister that I heard a little while ago, because Black people are looking for a key to a door that is already open. And why I use that analogy, because it reminds me of my father. Like I said, I was born in Trinidad and Tobago. I didn't grow up, I wasn't born in America. My father thought his fortune lied in America, not in Trinidad. So he wanted to get to America. And at that time, one of the easiest and best ways was to send your wife. So my mother left her 3 babies in Trinidad to go to New York, to get a job as a nanny, to raise somebody else's family. So her family, because of her husband, could come to the United States to build a better life. And many people have followed that migration pattern. So I am the product of immigration, of a migration as well. I understand it very well, very well. So that's why that show prompted we need to talk and understand more. So the series consists of this first week of this first show around Black consciousness, which I will unpack in a bit. The second week is Life After Civil Rights, which will be on Wednesday, November 27th. The pros and cons, because civil rights was passed in 64, the Voting Act was passed in 65. So we've had a few decades now with these things. And where are we as a collective of Black people since civil rights. So we'll unpack that on Wednesday, November 27th. Then the following month, we'll talk about Jordans versus books, which will be right now Monday, December 30th. And the reason why it's not on a Wednesday, because the last Wednesday of December is Christmas Day. I don't know about you, but no one is paying me double time and a half to work on Christmas Day. I don't know how you get double time and a half out of free. So, so right now I put the Monday, the 30th of December as a placeholder, and I will get in touch with the panelists. Miss Anjie and I'll get in touch with the panelists to see if that date is a good day for everyone. It'd be a kind of nice way to end the end 2024 as well. And then the final show of the series, which will be on Wednesday, January 29th, 2025, which sounds like it's a long ways off, but it's not, because 2025 is coming in really fast. I can't believe we're already here. But the final show of the series is Black Excellence. What does being a sellout Uncle Tom and white-minded mean? Because I find that very interesting. And you have Black excellence, and not all, but in today's world, when Black people seem to strive and do well, the biggest criticism you tend to face doesn't come from the outside, tends to come from within. And I don't have enough fingers and toes anymore to count how many times I've been called a sellout. I've been called an Uncle Tom, right? When I was a younger man, it used to bother me, just like someone calling me nigger. Now, I don't. I wear that with pride, because anytime someone calls me an Uncle Tom, it says to me, number one, you don't know any history, and number two, you never read the book. So you don't know that Uncle Tom is the actual hero, not what you're trying to pin on me. So that's just the premise of what we're going to get into over the next few months under the show title Black Like Me, Life in the Diaspora. So tonight we're here to talk about Black consciousness. And what does that mean? Again, when I say Black, I'm not talking race. So if we look at the two words, Black, Negro, we understand that, right? Anyone from African heritage that may have also, like I said, lived in other parts of the world, but stem from African heritage, we call Black, Negro, whatever term we use. I myself personally don't have a problem with the word Negro, but many people do. Because when I was a kid growing up, I don't remember hearing the word nigger a lot, but I heard Negro a lot, like Negro, please, right? So I find it interesting. And then when we look at the word consciousness, consciousness by definition, a sense of one's personal or collective identity, including the attitudes, beliefs, sensitivities held by or considered characteristics of an individual or a group, right? Mindset, how we think. Culture ties into that, because culture is about attitude, beliefs, and the things that we do, the practices that we have. So when we talk about Black consciousness, that's what I'm really talking about. It's more the mindset and then look at attitude, right? And that's what I really want to dive into. So, and then I already just talked about this for you. So when we talk about Black consciousness, when you hear the word Black consciousness or the terming, Black consciousness gained a lot of popularity in the 60s. And it really actually, from the coining of those two words, is something that came out of South Africa, excuse me, that was birthed from South Africa and their fight against apartheid, particularly Stephen Biko and a lot of the African Negro Congress, and I think it was the Pan-African group that were facing tremendous persecution. There was a major massacre that happened, I think it was in '63, that raised up the students, Stephen Biko being one of them, around this Pan-Africanism, Black consciousness. Again, raising Black consciousness, raising our understanding of our identity, our characteristics, our humanism, bringing a spotlight to saying Black people are human and we're being denied our basic human rights. That's where it stemmed from. But the Black consciousness, when you go and do some research, when you pull it up, it will say Stephen Biko and Africa, but they were also motivated from those that came before them, particularly in the United States, like Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Marvis Garvey. Marvis Garvey, although is in the States, but he was also out of the Caribbean because he was Jamaican. You can even go back further, to Booker T. Washington and W.B.E. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, one of the early pioneers of Black consciousness, Nate Taylor, who led the first slave revolt in America in 1834, I believe, or something like that. So Black consciousness, as much as they have paired it with South Africa and apartheid, it does stem from America, right? And there are other noted people. When I think about Black consciousness, I think of people like I said, Nate Turner, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, but then there's people like Stephen Biko. Everyone knows about Nelson Mandela, great man, but Stephen Biko, to me, set such a strong foundation for a lot of what happened in South Africa that I think more people need to know. There's a number of people, but we don't have time to get into all of it. Desmond Tutu and many others. So that lifted the plight. There were whites as well involved in wanting to uplift people, but today we're going to talk about Black and Black consciousness. So, but a shout out to our white brothers and sisters that have always been part of the struggle, and not just whites, many other people in the rainbow that has helped in the struggles of many different ethnicities. So that's just a very, very high level overview when we talk about Black consciousness, right? Just to give you a little context of what we're looking to discuss today. So today, for me, when I think of Black consciousness, is the Black mindset. Where is our mindset? Having said that, there is no collective Black anything, just like there's no collective white anything or Chinese. It's a made up of individuals, but there is a pattern of behavior that we all exhibit because we grew up together, we grew up around each other. We're going to adapt certain things. Just like a lot of Black culture today, I find problematic because it's an old culture that we adapted from white people back in the day because our culture was left in Africa to some degree. And it came over, and some of it survived, but a lot of it morphed, or a lot of it was forgotten. So the slaves of the day adopted from the whites what they saw. This is why if you were to examine what they call rednecks, right, and poor Blacks, you will see similar practices in regards to how they conduct themselves. Doesn't matter race. It has a lot to do with culture and education. A lot of our foods that we think comes from Africa and our practices actually comes from across the pond in parts of England, right? That we think was established. Jumping over the broom is not a Black tradition out of Africa. It comes out of Europe. Just like in Native culture, they believe they call bannock. Every culture has a fry bread, right? I always thought that was a native dish. It's not. It's an old English dish. So we have always adopted and taken cultures and practices from each other for centuries. So all this cultural appropriation is nonsense because we have been doing that. When I say we, not just Black people, humans steal and bite from each other. And a lot of times it's not stealing it, they're doing it out of admiration for what they're seeing and witnessing. This is why I find it interesting that we don't want to share our culture. And yet so many look to Black people for cultural trends because we're that cool. Yep, we're that cool. We set trends. So I think that's interesting. So for me, Black culture, Black consciousness is a mindset of the individual and into the collective of those that identify with this skin color, this pigmentation. and I keep pointing to this because in the poem I'll read later, I have no shame in this. I celebrate my pigmentation. So, see, Miss Anjie, how I ramble on? When I get into the moment, I let it go. But I'm going to ask our panel, and I'll start with you, Chyrel, because I'm old school. You know, ladies go first. When you hear the term Black consciousness, what does that mean to you?
Well, it definitely means culture for me. But it's more than that. It is also history. It's family.
Mm-hmm.
It's language for me. My sister and I, we have this conversation all the time because there is a real attempt at this point to take certain things that are synonymous with Black culture, and to somewhat whitewash or redefine it in certain aspects. And that didn't just start. It's always been the case, but I really tend to notice it because you know, the silliness. You know, I politics is a real big thing at this point in time. So you see a lot of lifts of certain terms like wokeness.
Yeah.
And some of the language that we use in our Black experience. So when you ask me what I think it is, I think it's all of those things, but it's not limited to that. But it would start, I think, you know, I think when you ask me, I think about the Black church experience as well. So there are just so many. This is just such an open, such a big, you know, place to start.
Yeah.
But I don't want to ramble too much. That's what I think.
No, that's good. That's good. And, you know, it's funny you mentioned the Black church because I think that's something I was going to include in this, but I figured, I think during February, I want to do a special show around that. Because for the month of February, I'm pretty sure sometime next month, which is coming up very quickly, Miss Anjie and I will probably start sitting down and planning February. Now, I'm not a big Black History Month supporter because my history is not just February, but it is still part of the fabric of the land. So, you know, I'm going to play nicely in the pool. More importantly, not to just play nicely, but to honor those who had come before that have done amazing things that I think people need. Because to your point, I have never, you know, I think, yeah, I understand what people in power do. They're going to, you know, take a lot of things and then try to make it their own. And this is one of the reasons Black people don't know some of the things we were talking, you know, what we've done. Before we started taping, we were talking about some of the inventors and things that have done. You know, when I think of, you know, Black X, I think of someone like Dr. Henry Carson, Ben Carson, sorry, that comes to mind, right? You know, we've had some amazing people have done some amazing things throughout our history. But people of power always want to take credit for things that they didn't do, or to maintain their power, they're going to try to eradicate and take their history. That's a common practice, not just for white Europeans, that's anyone in power. So I appreciate you saying that, and thank you. Eddy, what are your thoughts when you hear Black consciousness? What comes to mind to you?
Well, first, I'd just say, very great question. Well, Black consciousness means to me is having a sense of awareness, not just for you, not just for me, not just for your family, friends, but your ancestors as well. Like you said, we've come from a very determined and innovative race of people that invented invented so many things that we use till today, like the stove, the fridge, home security systems, the egg beater, you name it. And what upsets me the most is I see our black brothers and sisters always downgrading and doesn't make any sense.
Hmm.
And it doesn't affect just on me, but to all of us as well.
Right, right. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. Thank you. I share I share how you feel. I mean, I know you and I have talked a bit about this, in our one-on-ones, but I share. And like I said, Black consciousness is a very interesting word because I love the way Chyrel broke it down. So when you think about, when in reality, Black consciousness is really about self-awareness, self-determination, and it's more than just integration, right? It is more than just integration. It does involve our history and our cultural understanding and so forth. Back in the 60s, say it loud, I'm Black and proud, and all this. It's more than just slogans and sayings. It's a mindset as well. So I appreciate that. So I am going to, because I've probably blown this segment up as far as time goes, because Miss Anjie spent a lot of time building a script only to have her partner in crime be a true criminal and blow it out of the water. But I'll pass the mic over to you, back to you, Miss Anjie. I think you're muted still.
Very good. I enjoyed this segment just then. I was enjoying what everyone was saying, and it rings true. And if we're not careful, a lot of things our ancestors fought for, we're going to lose. And it has already started with the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they've taken it out of a lot of workplaces, and a lot of people don't even know that it's gone. And with that, we're losing everything. That means that we got to stand in lines just like everybody else, and there is no more. We got to have two of you to work. Two of you to work is like get in where you fit in. And so, but if we're not cognizant, we're gonna go back, and it's bad because our youth don't even know where we came from. So we're pretty lost.
Yeah.
I would like to remind our guest that if you have anything that you would like to say, please put it in the chat, and I'll be more than happy to present the question or present the comment. Now, we're going to move to our second question. And it actually is a question similar to what Rawle just said. This is, where do you think we are with self-determination, Black culture, and self-realization going into 2025? Eddy, will you start the dialogue since Chyrel started first last time?
Sure, no problem. I think actually I agree on your terms. Wonderful question. I think we're trying to find ourselves, if that makes any sense. Because the African American culture is just, I mean, we come from very hardworking, determined people, but like you said, the youth don't understand that. They think that acting, going to the streets, doing nefarious things is Black culture, but it's not. It isn't. It's just it's just a shade or another side of Black culture, but not the positive side of Black culture. Like what we're doing now, we're not just representing just our family and friends, but our ancestors as well, and their strive to pursue knowledge and freedom.
Thank you, Eddy. Chyrel? Chyrel, will you give me your thoughts?
I actually was thinking as you were talking and Eddy was talking. From my perspective, our people, as in Black people, we're very lost. It almost seems as if we're lost on purpose.
Mm.
The things that used to mean so much, that we had such awareness of and such pride in, is no longer the case. It's almost as if, and I use my parents as the example, they were beaten and by hoses and had to walk and sit at the back of the bus so that I could sit in the front. And it's like all the strides that they did to get us to this point have been lost. And younger generations almost seem content to have that be the case. And it makes me so angry, because I know it doesn't have to be this way. It just doesn't have to be this way. In part, we cannot count on people instilling a sense of pride in us. If you don't have pride, no one can make you have that. That is not something that someone can teach you. You have to have that within you.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems like in 2024, I think about my parents. I think about my dad putting on a suit. I think about him being the first Black architectural engineer that the EPA had. It was him. But I also remember him having to carry his credentials and his college degree in the back of his pocket as he rode a CTA bus
Mm-hmm.
for the Chicago Transit Authority. Because when he would interview, white men looked at him and said, "Your people don't do this kind of work." And that went on for some time. But then my godfather, which was a white man, gave him his first opportunity, which made life a whole lot easier for us. But my dad was this little country boy from the South, but he had some fight about him. And it just seems like we've been beaten down so much that we no longer have that same drive, that same fight, that innate sense of wanting to be more, because we're just so content on being whatever. So.
Yes, Rawle.
Thank you.
Put your hand down.
Yeah, I love what you both said, and I completely agree with you, Chyrel. I remember when I first came to New York, and I remember the first time we went to church, how people dressed. And then as I got into the school system, and I've always been a curious kid and I loved history. And when I look back at the history, particularly the Black history, and then you see how Black people used to dress and the pride that they took. Today we're shown limited, I wouldn't say limited, but we're still being shown images that project the negative and the poor side of Black culture. And that actually really started during the civil rights movement, the late 50s. Even in the South, things were getting better. Black and white interaction were getting better. A lot of it was because of economics, like you were talking about, Chyrel. The Blacks in those days, to me, they had racism to fight because it was the law of the land. Jim Crow and segregation was alive and well. So yeah, papers, please. Are you disrespecting me, boy? And you're looking blah, blah, blah. Those things were real. People were being lynched still in the 50s, sometimes in the 60s. I'm not denying those things. And yet through that harshness, there was still a sense of pride and dignity. If you go back and you look at photos of Black so-called ghettos today, and you go back and you look in the 30s and the 40s, they don't look the way they do today. They didn't look like that back then. People took pride, and the people that had to be on government assistance recognized it was a temporary thing, but they still took pride in where they lived. I'm sure as we get into the series, somewhere along the line, we'll touch on Black Wall Street. Everyone knows Black Wall Street and how it was bombed and destroyed. People don't realize a lot of the footage and the few videos that exist from the Black Wall Street era, you're looking at the second version of Black Wall Street, because then the destruction of Black Wall Street happened in 1921. By 1925, they had rebuilt it even bigger and better than it was. What was Black Wall Street? It was a district within the Greenwood district in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that housed Black community that was self-reliant and self-sustaining. Businesses, churches, bus line. We did it all. We were making money. And if you look at the footage, you'll see Black communities and Black people dressed and carrying themselves with a sense of dignity, like Chyrel talked about, pride. I don't know if it's been beaten out of us, Chyrel, or so much as we've taken for granted what those had done before. Those that actually had to fight and face racism, like your father, every day faced it. And yet somehow it didn't stop him. It didn't stop your mom. So I find it interesting where we have evolved to as a collective of Blackness. Number one. Number two, I think in this day and age, we are so bombarded with social media and media of a negative stereotype that we think that's what it is. And I'm starting to realize, when the more research I do, when I go back and I look at like the civil rights time, there were a lot of positive things going on. Don't get me wrong, Jim Crow is still alive. Don't get me wrong. But we didn't see the positive things that were going on. We didn't hear the concerns that Black people had within their own. I came across a video that I shared with Miss Anjie of young Black professionals in Los Angeles in 1964. They had a gathering in one of their homes, and there was probably at least 30, 40 people there. And they were talking about, what are we going to do with the Black migration that's coming out of the South? And not just the Black migration, the ones that they considered not prepared, uneducated, that didn't want to contribute to what they had built. This was in 1964. Black people were talking about that. And that's just one representation. So I don't know if it's been beaten out of us, or we have forgotten the strides that others had done. Like Chyrel talked about, her parents rode in the back of the bus so she could ride in the front of the bus. So, and maybe it's a combination of both, I'm not sure. But I think too, we're just not given a lot of the positive news spin. So we assume it's just been one way. Thank you. Yeah.
I have a comment from Artemis, and when I get through reading her comment, Chyrel, you and Eddy commented on her comment, and I would like for you, when I get through reading it, share your view. Her comment is, we have lost our unity, and the younger generations have no value on our lives, no value on our lives as people, or even any value on their own lives. I have noticed that other races know that Blacks have no problem shooting or stabbing one another. They value material things. Artemis, on that, the reason, part of the reason that is, one, is that we have movies and shows on TV that glamorize drug selling. It glamorize, what is that? Ghost now is Raising Cain. You got this young boy running a whole mafia of nothing but drugs. We're killing our own people because we're selling them the drugs. That's the first thing. The second thing is, when you have nobody that shows you love, you have no way of knowing what love is. You can't expect a child to show love or love themselves when they have no parents that even remotely. You got a mother that's on drugs, a dad that's in the engine. You don't have that. So yes, that's a problem. Cheryl, will you give me your thoughts? You put comments in. You want to read your comments?
Yeah, I was just reading it too.
Specifically what, because I have another comment in there.
Okay, you put in there, there's more than the clothing. It is the very
Yes.
physical, wait, hold on, it's going up. Somebody just put another one. It's the very physical appearance of our natural God-given features that are no longer appreciated either. Eddie says, thanks very much. Artemis agrees strongly. Artemis always also put into CJ, Cheryl, sorry. She says, I love your comment about your father. I totally have a similar experience with mine. Sydney wrote, I think for younger generation, it's the video games and the social media. Great comments. Wow. I really appreciate all of the responses and the interaction. It makes this show worth it. Cheryl, are you prepared to do your poem now?
Yeah, it's more of a celebratory piece, but I thought it was so
It's fine. I'm looking forward to it.
okay. The name of it is called Black Like Me. And this is actually my sister's poem, but it just, I have to do it. It's called Black Like Me. Black like who? Black like me. Black like you. Black. So black, you're almost blue. Dark chocolate, milk chocolate, even white chocolate. Black. Black like the night, smooth and right. Black like the dark side of the moon. Rhythmically, erotically, black. Like a Miles Davis tune. So black, you're almost purple. Mystical, magical, downright mythological, like Pharaoh inside his tomb. Black. Black like who? Black like me.
Awesome. Awesome.
Can I just say, because Miss Angie and I were talking before you guys came on about black and black. You know, there are tribes in Africa that still like that. The Maasai come to mind. They're so black, they almost look purple, like majestic. Like you ever look at their skin. So yeah, I love that. And yeah, I think that's a really good piece. Tell your sister, well done. Well done.
That's what my daughter Amber calls liquid black.
Liquid.
That's what she used to call the guys that liked her that when she was growing up, because she's a little light-skinned girl, and
Right.
they would always be the darkest ones. And she was just, I don't like the liquid black.
I always tell people, you know, without the dark, without black, nothing exists. You know, where did the light come from? God extracted the light from the dark. We came out of the dark continent that started shit. So
They said the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice, and I truly believe that.
So maybe we as Black people need to embrace that. Anyway.
I'm really enjoying this. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I really am.
I'm not. I thought I would have fun with this, but it's
we have another question. It says, what are some of the biggest challenges facing Black communities today? And how can Black consciousness address those challenges? Eddy, I think I started with you last time. Cheryl, let me start with you this time.
I'm sorry, I was trying to respond to Artemis in the chat. So can you repeat what you were saying?
What my question is? Okay, hold on. It says, what are some of the biggest challenges facing Black communities today? And how can Black consciousness address those challenges?
I think about it from the basics of just simple, we would be beaten in jails where we weren't allowed to read. And now we have all of this literature, all of these wonderful history books and stuff at our fingertips, even from our phones that we could pull information up. And we refuse to read. And that, in my humble opinion, is where we really have missed, I think, a whole lot of stuff. I mean, when me and my sister were kids growing up, our head was always down inside of a book. We loved to read. We read so much until kids teased us because our parents were on us about the way we spoke.
Yes.
And not sounding, like we weren't reared properly.
Ignorant.
Exactly. And you have to be really, really careful with words because I feel like I'm home and I'm not in front of polite company, so I can pretty much say what I want to say, but I don't want to say something and then have it be offensive. So I'm kind of dialing back a lot of what I would initially say because I am very cognizant of the fact that it could be taken a certain way.
I have
But
my
to
hand
me,
raised for a second, Chyrel. Can I interject just real quick? Because I said the word ignorant, so I don't want it to be associated that she said that. And the reason why I use that word ignorant, I have no fear over that word because ignorance says you don't know, but you're open to knowing. Stupid says, I don't know, and I don't care that I know. So I just wanted to clarify that because to your point, words are important. And I was the one that said ignorant, not you. So
I have used the word ignorant and have had that may as well have been a fight. That may as well have been me absolutely cursing someone. So I get it. But having said that, the fact that we are just so unlearned and unwilling, just at this point, we are unwilling to learn because I never see younger moms taking their children to the libraries anymore. They're just things of that nature that you just kind of miss because we were those kids. We were with our mom and dad at the library, all the time. So I think I just wished that we had more of an appreciation for books and learning as opposed to being on our cell phones all day and scrolling social media.
well said, well said.
Eddy, can you give me your opinion?
Sure, no problem. And I say that's a very, 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 very good question. My opinion is it has to be ourselves because we always put ourselves down. Explaining is I think this happened to Rawle or other Black people. We go up to other Black people and we say, "Hey, how are you?" And they respond like, "You talk white," or you talk proper." It's like, and they just walk away. And my response is the reason why I talk this way, so I can prove to everyone else that we're more than meets the eye. And to show what our ancestors strive of, which is knowledge and freedom. Because I think it's about ourselves, the unity. We don't have any unity anymore, which kind of makes me upset because back in the day, our ancestors used to come together and help each other out the best way they can. But now we're just dispersed, and we're dispersed on so many reasons. It could be pride, it could be mental illness, it could be poverty, it could be so many reasons. But the most value reason is unity, and we don't have it in this community. We don't. I mean, we used to have it in the civil rights movement, like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, but we don't have those leaders anymore. And when we do have these leaders, they're not looking at our benefit; they're looking at their benefit, which I'm trying to highlight is Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. Well said.
I agree. And one of the things that's missing too is back when I was growing up, I'm just 29, so how it go. When I was growing up, the teachers we had were actually they were lived in the civil rights era. So their values were totally different. And we had to learn the values. They made sure we learned everything we need because they always taught us you're Black. That means you have to do 100 plus. You can't do less. I can remember in Birmingham, a cashier at Kmart had to have a college degree if she was Black before she could be a cashier. You would see white women there just out of high school. Back in the day, you didn't have the calculator types. You had to literally add the text in your head. Black girls couldn't do it on their fingers. They had to do it in their head. But the white girls, it was okay for them to count their figures. They would sit there literally. And I thought that was so unfair. But Black people have really strived really hard to come a long way. When you turn 18, when I was in high school, they ran a field trip. You had to go become a registered voter. That was a bus that took you. Then I turned 18 in June. My mama herded me that I had to become a registered voter. So they're not teaching that anymore. They're not even teaching kids how to write a letter. They don't even know how to cursive write. They can't sign their name. So either we as the Black adults gonna have to grab it by the horns, pull it back and try to repair it, or we're gone forever. That's it. We're gone forever.
Can I jump in on this?
Sure.
One thing I want to remind us of is that let's not get sucked down the vortex of what the media tells us as well. The majority of Black people in Canada and in the US live in the middle class. We've also been subjugated to believe that what we're seeing today as Black culture is the Black culture for the majority of Blacks. That's not the case. To me, there's Black culture, true Black culture, and what I call ghetto culture. And ghetto culture has taken over, which unfortunately through rap. And rap is another industry that's been hijacked.
Mm-hmm.
It's been hijacked. I remember living in LA when my brothers were in the early days of rap and going and rapping with guys like Run DMC before they became Run DMC and Ice and all these guys. I go back to the days with Grandmaster Flash.
Mm-hmm.
Because rap started out of New York. It was political. It was about highlighting our plight. Even in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, many Blacks were striving and doing well. In the heart of, not the heart, but segregation, definitely. Jim Crow was still around, but segregation. So we have to educate ourselves. But to Chyrel's point, education doesn't seem to be something that is valued anymore. Education, striving for excellence. We only seem to want to strive for excellence when it comes to entertainment and sports. I'm a kid that loves sports. I played sports all the time. All the time. But one of my favorite activities as well was to lay on my bed with an encyclopedia, and I would go through it. And whatever grabbed my attention, then I'd go to the library when he had to physically still go to the library and do research and learn how to research. So we have to try to keep things in perspective and balance. Did some whites have it easier? Yes, because the system was built to make it easier for them. But a lot of white people struggled as well. How do you know? Go talk to the people in the Appalachian areas of America today. They're not striving and doing well. So this white privilege nonsense, that's out the window. Life wasn't fair for Black people. Life isn't fair for a lot of people. I just look at what our ancestors did. And I look at someone like a Thomas Sowell. If you don't know that name, I invite you to know that name. Thomas Sowell, who was born in North Carolina in Jim Crow in the early 40s. Grew up in Harlem, found his way to Harvard University, graduated from Harvard, got his master's in, I believe, at Cornell, and then his PhD in economics at the University of Chicago. And he did all of that when it was still not in our favor to do that. Walter Williams is another one. Shelby Steele, Robert Woodson. The majority of Black people, even then, were living better than the media wants you to think that we know. So we have to keep that in perspective. But it has definitely declined because of convenience and because Black culture has been hijacked to be now one facet. That's why I said to you at the beginning, go and look at, when we talk about rednecks, go and look at that culture and you will see the same thing that we talk about rednecks in the ghetto culture. That's what I call it. Chris Rock, a number of years ago now, did a show when he talked about there's a difference between Black and niggers. And he was right. And I'll say it. Because Eddy, you're right. I speak well. I've heard that my whole life. You speak hoity-toity. What do you think? You're special? You think you're white? Go and look at Black countries and look at how they speak. But then people will go, well, they were colonized and the Europeans influenced them. No, go and look at how they speak. They do not encourage the ghetto of their culture to represent them because they want good things in life, not because of the white man, because it makes them feel good. The status of being educated, knowing how to speak well, knowing how to speak multiple language, knowing how to interact, knowing how to feel proud and being Black. So I think it's a great question. It's unfortunate, these are big topics for a short time, but at least we're kind of looking at the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more. So I invite you to go to dive deeper. Anyway, thank you, Ms. Anjie.
Chyrel, have you given your opinion on the question? Did I get you or did I miss you? We got to talking. I just want to make sure I didn't miss you. I know Eddy talked. Did you talk, Chyrel?
I think so.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I think she did, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure because we got so into the conversation. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss. Eddy, are you prepared to give us your poem now?
Oh, sure. I'm always prepared. I'm glad you care. Thank you for being here, there, and everywhere. Sure. I think everyone heard this, but this is called Pitch Black Unity. A mighty wise man once said, he had a dream, an eternal legacy flowing like a rushing stream. It's more power to take a large brick than to hold a gun. It shows more strength to be an iron wall than a mock sun. African American freedom fighters who are departed but never forgotten. Their lively spirits leaves our beating hearts less rotten. Their fearless sacrifice hasn't been tarnished or in vain. God knows they suffer from barking ignorance, whipping stupidity, and biased reign. In their last dying breaths, they never cursed, bellowed, or raised with ill will. Their whole impact gave the hooded phantoms deep panic, fears, and chills. Our ancestors were bound in rusty, rattling, and clinging chains. Their ironclad determination helped us deal with the isolating pains. They suffer in agonizing darkness to bring us into the painless light. Some of you carelessly toss it away and hunger for spite. The unforeseen burns or backstabbings by ignorant whites and even against ourselves, yet people keep forgetting that book on those shelves. It's not easy being a big black ink blot on a white canvas. We're trying to get this rage and stress off a roaring chest. Fighting, shouting, and killing like blinded guns isn't the answer. It just spread the venomous river of hate so much faster. Hate never loves, but only exterminates and destroys. Please be mindful that we're human beings and not mindless toys. Bitter vengeance is a dish left freezing cold. Is it really satisfactory to deliver punishment sevenfold? It's easy to build instead of burning bridges. Aaron knows it's better to heal than to dig ditches. It doesn't matter if you're red, black, or white. Let's bury the hatchet and fight the good fight. There's strength in numbers, so let's become an enormous radiant sun. Let's make our voices, struggles, and powers into one. Black history isn't supposed to be celebrated just 1 month. Let's give ancient white bigotry one master dynamite punch. Thank you.
Jeez.
Awesome as always. Before I do the Inspired Portrait Corner News, I'm gonna throw in a poem too.
What?
It's called Josiah Henson, Not an Uncle Tom.
Oh, yes.
A name created through fiction, born into slavery, sold and beaten, not change nor pain could make him hate. They labeled him meek, they labeled him weak, they labeled him master's boy. A man of integrity and sincerity, a tower of strength was he. They tried to break him, but betray his fellow man, he would not. In the cotton fields, on the master's watch, he held onto his faith. Through books skewed the truth, though books skewed the truth, his courage was pure. Let us reclaim the name they defamed and honor the man who refused to be tamed. The real Uncle Tom, a hero unsung, whose legacy of strength will forever be young. Okay, thank you.
And he's rolling in his grave in a happy dance. I remember
When you and I
shared
had that conversation one day, and I kept thinking, that's a good way for people to know the story because they're not going to read a book.
So true.
We have Inspired Portrait Corner News. Friday, November the 15th, we'll have in celebration our featured poet and book will be Clara Conroy. It's at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Wednesday, November 13th is above the no, we changed that. Sorry.
We changed that yet. Yeah.
We changed that. Sorry. November 17th is IPC recital, where we'll all come together and share our lovely poetry. On Wednesday, November the 20th is Home is the Heart. And also, let me back up. With the IPC recital, we always have a featured poet there, or a guest poet there. And then we have, as Rawle call us, not ready for not ready for prime time. Yeah, we have a few that support the poet of the hour. And Home is the Heart is where all of us get together and we share our awesome words. That's on Wednesday, November the 20th. Wednesday, November the 27th is the day before Thanksgiving. So we'll have Above the Noise is scheduled, but because it's the day before Thanksgiving, there may be some changes, but we'll let you know.
We'll let you know.
And I want everybody to know I really appreciate you coming out. I really appreciate all the words. And above all, Rawle, I appreciate you keeping me from passing out.
You did great, my friend.
Will you close us out with a poem, please?
Yeah, I'll close us out with more than a poem. I just want to share my gratitude for this. When you put things together, you don't know how it's always going to turn out. I don't gauge success on the amount of people that show up. I gauge success on the ones that did show up and did you get something from this. And I hope you all did, because I did. I find the older that I get, the more connected I feel to my Blackness, the more connected I feel to my Trinidad roots, the more connected I feel as a human being. And I love being a human being, but I also love being a Black human being. I didn't ask for this. I did choose it in my spiritual belief, because I believe we signed a soul contract with God a long time ago for many different lives to experience His Spirit. So I'm glad that I'm this. I have no shame in it. I think when I was a younger man, I did, because I didn't understand. I didn't understand. I'm not going to lie. But that shame didn't last long, because very quickly I started to see through the lies that we were told. Many people were opening doors for me. A lot of them were white. Didn't want anything in return other than just give it your best shot. A lot of times the racism that I faced didn't come from white. It came from my own. So I started to see things differently and understand things differently. And to understand, you need to Cheryl's point, open the damn book and immerse your mind in new knowledge. And the more I studied and understood our history, it's like, man, do you know how rich our history is? Because today, unfortunately, many Black, particularly a lot of Black youth, think our history started when we started coming over on those slave ships. We have built amazing structures. We've created amazing things, inventions that you're using today that were created by people that look like you and I. This is why when the movie Hidden Figures came out, so many people were pissed off. How did I not know this? Well, the victors are going to tell their story, and we're living in the land of the victor. But look at how the victor has turned as well. Because people forget, white people were conditioned to believe a lie. Race was created during this version of slavery. Slavery is not something new. It's been on this planet forever. The great Mansa Musa, who was probably still the richest man to ever live, and did amazing things with his wealth in the Mali Empire, also had slaves. Why? Because it was an accepted practice. There were 3,700 Black slave owners in America alone. Many of them were ex-slaves. Some of them had slaves so they can keep their families close, but many of them also had slaves because why? They wanted to make money like anyone else. Our history is complex, not simple. And I don't blame the Europeans, because the Europeans at one time were colonized as well. But when you don't know any history, you don't know. The Europeans were slaves at one time. And before they started to enslave Africans, they were enslaving themselves as well. The Chinese were doing it. The Native Americans were doing it. I speak this way so we can get past this nonsense. The white man owes me nothing. I am free. I am free of thought. And if that's the case, I can do. And there are many that want to help. And the many have helped. And the biggest help we need is with ourselves. And we need to get back to a place where we were united. We always like to talk Black people are united and haven't done anything. That's a lie. The more I look into it, we have done amazing things. You know, coming out of Reconstruction, there's a lot of our history that was hidden, not necessarily just by the white man, by ourselves, because we want to be ignorant to it. Black Wall Street is one of countless towns across America that was striving. We don't know our own history, particularly our own recent history. That's hindering not just Black, but white. So I'm grateful for this. I will challenge you and invite you, if this was of value, spread it out. Let's get more people onto these shows. It's one of the reasons Miss Anjie and I want to do this, is to educate. And not just Black people, bring our white friends as well. We need to have these conversations and realize we're actually living together better than we were. There was a time that it felt like we were doing really well with race relations. When I go back and I look at the numbers, is one of the reasons I love Thomas Sowell. He looks at the numbers. If you want things to change, you have to have a baseline to start somewhere. So he uses data as a baseline to start. And the relationship between Black and white from the 1910s to up to 60s was projecting up every decade. It got better. It was getting better. And then all of a sudden it started to take a dip. And ironically enough, it got worse under the so-called first Black president. I find that interesting. So I invite you, share this, not just to make Miss Anjie and I popular, because I don't care about that stuff. What I care about is our humanity. I care about our human consciousness. And I care about our Black people. Not because we're struggling. No, we're not. We're striving. We're doing better than people think. But we're more than rappers and we're more than athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Ben Carson's living proof of that. Henry Kane is living proof of that.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two Black men that did amazing things. Miss Johnson, who the movie was made of for Hidden Figures, is living proof of that. And her whole family and friends in that Virginia community that were middle-class Black, striving and doing well. They were representative of many Black families. And she worked at NASA with her sisters, not just those three women in the movies, a litany of Black women. I look at my own mother working for Bell in New York and the things that she were able to do. A small little woman, girl from an island called Trinidad.
Mm-hmm.
We've done amazing things that's been hidden from us. It's time to unhide. It's time to us to take it back. Maybe remember what truly binded the Black community, at least when I was a kid. It's called the Black church. We need to take our Black churches back. They've been hijacked as well.
Yes.
They've been hijacked.
Yes.
This is why I do this. You don't have to be a God-fearing person to understand. But for Black people, it's one thing I always admired about Black Americans. They're very, not religious. They have great faith. Christianity wasn't something introduced to many Blacks in slavery. Many of them came with their faith. Many of them had the faith of the Jews that live in Israel today. Go in parts of Cameroon and Ethiopia, you'll see true Judaism being practiced. So many Blacks had their faith, not just in God, but their own African cultures as well. And we've forgotten that spirituality. We have lost it. Cheryl's right. We used to take pride in who we were and how we spoke and how we dressed and helping each other. These ghettos today is not a representation of where we come from, because those same ghettos used to look really good, populated with Black people that took pride in their neighborhoods. People could walk down the street and not hear gunshots. What the heck happened to us? We want to sit there and blame slavery on the white man and then walk around saying we're free? The white man owes me nothing. I thank you all for this. Miss Anjie and I are grateful. This was amazing. I will close off with a poem. I was trying to figure out which one I was going to use, but I'll go to one that I've done before. But I think it's poignant for today. It's called Necessary for You. From the fringe of my consciousness, I penned this piece in hopes of inspiring and awakening from the distractions of life's BS. Deception cast over wisdom as we live in a fear-induced construct of ignorance. I find myself caught up in a landslide of thoughts, fighting against the downward tumble of energies. The debris of our human frailty fills the airwaves, suffocating the good that still resides in our hearts. We rumble and seek to make sense of who we are in this world, where freedom is written against the shadow of colonization. Many are in a vice grip of institutional victimhood that guilts with shame, while others remain imprisoned in glory days, embracing a mindset that blankets the past with the morality of present day. I am not a nigger or my nigga. As James Baldwin said, it was an invented word. It was necessary for you, not me. It reflected the fears that dwelled within, covering a false sense of superiority through conquest and greed. I am human. Black, my walk. Not a condemnation of race, but a celebration of pigmentation. I simply speak my truth, unafraid of investigation as a free man of thought. I am a descendant of kings and queens, architects of great civilizations. My ancestors were the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I am the beautiful product of their legacy. Scattered to the four corners, disconnected and uninspired, the history of a people were hijacked, discredited, and whited out. Families, culture, and their sense of self rewired. Men were raped of their essence to be made boys. Women, virtues valued as concubine for amusement. Their spirit was under constant barrage of hell's fire. Humanity denied, their bodies beaten, crushed beyond recognition. Pleasure derived from having their race beaten beyond the molecular makeup that binds all life. Their daily bread never enough to sustain life, while being denied the ability to honor their temple. But their faith remained strong, praying on bloodstained knees, waiting for the judgment day, the rapture of the master's sins. I call upon the spirits of my ancestors as I stand up against injustices, to fuel a revolution where no pound of flesh is required as penance. I've learned to love within, to release the anger and hatred, to embrace the wisdom welted upon their backs. The virtues hidden in the cracked lines of their faces, in the chambers of my soul, I hear their voices echoing the call for liberty, tying us in a single garment of destiny. Their songs of freedom stayed constant as they carried the burden that was theirs to bear. And as their ashes return to enrich the earth, the dust of their bones stir in the winds while we wait for the awakening of our warrior soul. I issue a call to all my brothers and sisters. Free your hearts, unshackle from the mental slavery, to know we are a mighty people. Before raising a hand against your own, know the backs that took the lash. Before speaking with contempt and disrespect, know the lives not lived. The time has come for us to take our rightful place, to recognize the value of all life, leaving behind the insanity of indifference while embracing a mindset that brings us together. Our lives have to matter to us. Our history must matter to us. It is no longer us versus us, or even us versus them. Let us no longer be blind, deaf, and dumb as we embrace a mindset that casts out the insanity of indifference. Time to awaken and no longer be our own plantation masters. To be free within so we can live free together. Let us build anew, valuing all life as we fulfill the prophecy of those who came before us. The time has come to get right with our history, so we're not stuck in the hypocrisy of our history. Heart to heart, let us walk with grace and dignity and deliver on the promise of getting to the mountaintop. We are the fulfillment of prophecy that Nate Turner and Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, W.E.B. Du Bois, Langston Hughes, Jonathan Daniels, Viola Desmond, Fannie Lou Hamer, Claudette Colvin, Mammy Elizabeth Till, Daisy Bates, Dwight Eisenhower, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, Shirley Chisholm, Desmond Tutu, Stephen Biko, Nelson Mandela, and Robert Woodson spoke of. It is said the truth shall set you free, but only if one is open to the truth that binds us. We all walk the same earth, breathe the same air. drink the same water. We all come from woman, and death will visit us all. Let us not be colorblind, but be human sighted. End of piece. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the continued support of the Inspired Poetry Corner and Above the Noise. Help us make this talk show something that people want to come and see. We have plans for 2025 to deliver more amazing content. Help us spread the word. Thank you. I'll pass it over to you, Miss Anjie.
You left me speechless. I have nothing to say. I just want to thank everybody. I'm along with Rawle. Really appreciate all of y'all taking time out and actually sharing. Your interaction made this show a lot nicer. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you all the 27th, if not sooner.
If not sooner. Yeah, stay tuned. We might change the date, but we'll stay tuned. Thank you, guys. Love you all. Be well, stay strong. Enjoy the fall. I know tomorrow is trick-or-treating for the kids, so if you're doing that, have them enjoy it. Tell them to go out as their favorite Black poet, me. I see even Miss Purple Diva laughed on that one. All right, guys. Love you all. We'll talk and see you all. Stay strong. Stay strong. Stay strong. Love you all.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.